Now we're going to move on to South Asia and East Asia, and we're going to start out with the Harappan civilization, which emerged in the Indus Valley, which is where modern-day Pakistan, India area, right through here. Two of the big sites are Harappa, which is the first site that was identified, and that's what the civilization is named after. And then here's Mohenjo-Daro. We're also going to be talking about Indo-Europeans a little bit during this, so keep this area in mind. So, anyways, let's move on. The Harappan civilization, we think that it was called Meluha, and the reason we think that is because of Mesopotamian texts show that name, and based on the interpretation, it does seem like they're talking about the Indus Valley, so we might actually have the real name for this group of people, the Meluha. I'm going to skip all of the Pleistocene, late Pleistocene, early Neolithic stuff, and we're going to kind of jump into groups that are already farmers. They're already living in pretty large communities, very organized communities. We already have occupational specialization, so we are kind of skipping quite a bit here. But this period of starting around 5200 BP is often referred to as the era of regionalization, also the Khatiji phase. So we're starting to find a really distinct culture emerge in this area. Now, the Harappan civilization itself was unknown until the 1920s. There were hints about it in ancient texts like the Rig Veda, but it wasn't until John Marshall, a British archaeologist, started doing some work that he actually uncovered this. It only survived the civilization itself from 500 to 700 years, but they were able to consolidate their power pretty quickly. So in about 200 years, that entire river valley was integrated. Now, Mehrgarh is probably one of the important sites from this early Harappan period. You can see it here. It is kind of on the borderlands of the Indo-European plateaus up here and the actual river valley itself. First settled it early in the Neolithic, but during this Khatiji phase, we do find that it becomes a regional center for pottery production. And this is wheel-thrown pottery, so that implies some mass production, some uniformity of style, and so forth. We also know that they were working with copper, shell, stone to make different kinds of things. They were utilizing domesticated cattle, sheep and goats. And one of the interesting things that we do find here are formal cemeteries. So at least 5,600 years ago, they were laying out their dead in very specific manners, or treating them in very specific manners. Some people have referred to Mehrgarh as an early entrepot, and an entrepot is simply a frontier settlement of entrepreneurs who process raw materials that they collect from these hinterlands and then send finished products to larger cities. And we're actually going to kind of see that during the kind of height of the Harappan civilization also. Now, one of the earliest settlements on the Indus Plain itself is Balakat. It's possible that there are earlier sites, but they might be buried under the alluvium. At Balakat, we have mud brick platforms. We have decorated wheel-thrown pottery. We see a lot of the same domesticated animals, but we also see wild gazelle being utilized at Balakat, a lot of shellfish, and some barley. Another site from this time period is Hakra. It's up in the north, and there we do see more occupational specialization and community specialization, and they're doing ceramics. We also see some terracotta figurines. Bone is being used as well as metal to make things, and we also see a tool called a microlith, and micro, of course, implying that it's very, very small. You can kind of see here some of the characteristic pottery, the red globular looking thing, and some of the motifs that pop up on pottery. Because of some of these common motifs, some people have suggested that there's a common ideology emerging in this particular region. We do start to see some of the big sites established during the end of this period, like Harappa itself. And we do start to see formal planned settlements, and we do see some with fortifications, so walls around the cities itself. So now we're going to move into the Harappan Golden Age, I guess is one way to put it. The era of integration, so 4600 to 3900 BP, and this is the formal Harappan civilization. We see standardized artifacts. We see craft and settlement specialization become even more widespread. We find these four-tier settlement hierarchies. So just to kind of look at the map again, here's Harappa, one of the major sites, Mohenjo-Daro. Oops, let's go back a little second here. Kotdiji, so that last phase is actually named after a site itself. Kalibangan is another one here. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about Lothal down here. So the settlement hierarchy, there are four tiers to it, and the first tier are urban centers. So Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa, Dholavira, Rahigari, and Ganweriwala. These are all urban centers of the Harappan civilization. So this particular picture over here is of Dholavira, a reconstruction of what it might have looked like. And you can see it's pretty organized. They actually have waterways going through here, so water collection is very important. Here's a reconstruction of what the site of Harappa might have looked like at its peak. So I'm going to just show you a few pictures here of some of these major sites. Mohenjo-Daro, lots of public works here. This particular citadel-looking thing up here is not a part of the actual old site. Some Buddhist monks built a monastery on top of the ruins at one point. But here you can see the Great Bath. It's in the public arena, so it does look like they had kind of like public swimming pool kind of things going on here. And these are interpreted up here as like changing room kind of things. This, we believe, was a granary, so someplace to, of course, house people, or house food, excuse me. I was thinking ahead of myself there. And then just another picture of the Great Bath. Here's Harappa itself, still kind of in an excavation stage, but you can see a well here. There's also a pottery kiln up here. So again, still being excavated. Dholavira we already saw the reconstruction of, but here's a nice picture of the site itself. And Rakhigarhi. So here's a nice pot in situ, which just means it's still in place. And again, here you can see the place being excavated. We do start to see some pretty interesting art emerge, although we never see huge quantities of art emerge for the Harappans. The second tier sites, a couple of examples are Kalibangan and Lothal. And these look like they were probably entrepôts. So here's a reconstruction of Lothal, and you can see they built these safe harbors for ships to come in and unload all of their work. These ruins, they found mass raw materials of semi-precious stones. They also found finished beads, so it looks like that was one of the things that they were producing. We also find during this time frame quite a bit of the seals, very similar to what we saw in Mesopotamia, and using these to identify material that's inside, where it's going, things like that. Now the second tier sites are usually a little less than 20 hectares or around 49 acres. Now the third tier sites, a couple examples are Surkotara and Kuntasi. These sites are special production villages, so everybody in the village is making one thing. So whether it's a stone tool or pottery, everybody's doing it. These sites are between 2 to 4 hectares or around 5 to 10 acres. And the fourth tier sites are less than 1 hectare, which is approximately 2.5 acres. So farming villages and raw material production, and a couple of examples here of Balakot and Nageshwar.